So we have our jury back. You know, we start each day by asking you if you've learned anything new about the case since yesterday afternoon, or if you've become aware of any information which you were not aware of at the time of the jury draw, or which you now recall, which might influence you about this case, or if there's any reason in the world why you cannot fairly and impartially evaluate the evidence and deliver a just verdict. Everyone is indicating no. Party satisfied?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, let's continue with the evidence.
The state would call Mike Sorensen.
Stand by the chair, please. Raise your right hand. We solemnly affirm the evidence you shall give relative to the cause now under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth under pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Please be seated. Pull your chair forward and speak into the microphone.
Thanks.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Please state your name and spell your last name.
It's Michael Sorensen, and it's Sorensen.
And how are you employed?
Currently employed by the crash lab in Hampton, New Hampshire.
And is that in the private sector?
Yes.
So are you still going by your title from your previous employment?
No.
So you're now Mr. Sorensen?
Correct.
Okay. And are you retired from some sort of police agency?
Yes, I retired from the Vermont State Police.
And tell us, please, about your educational background. Where did you go to school?
I went to the Brattleboro Union High School, and in 1990 I joined the state police, went through the Vermont Police Academy in Pittsford, and retired on March 29th of this year.
So you were with the Vermont State Police from the time you graduated from the academy?
From January 8th, 1990 to, well, technically my birthday was March 30th of this year, so March 30th, but March 29th was my last day.
So prior to your retirement, can you just take us through your employment history while you were at the Vermont State Police?
Sure. I was initially assigned to the Shaftesbury Barracks as a road trooper. I worked there from 1990 to 1998.
What were you doing there?
I was a road trooper out
What
stopped.
does that entail?
Enforcing motor vehicle laws and criminal laws, uniformed trooper.
Okay, and then from there?
Then I did the same duties. I transferred to the Rockingham Barracks for 22 months, I believe. Then I transferred to the Brattleboro Barracks, where I worked for a while, and then I got put on the traffic safety team for about a year, right around September 11th, 2001 time. And then I went to the Rockingham Barracks, ultimately the Westminster Barracks, and then I got put on the crash reconstruction team full-time.
Okay, and when were you put on the crash reconstruction team?
I helped start the team back in 2008 or 2009, but I didn't get assigned full-time to the team until I think it was either May or June of 2017.
And what does the crash reconstruction team do?
We use the experience and training that we receive to help interpret evidence found at crash scenes, to help use science and math to put crashes back together and figure out what happened.
Okay. And have you had any training in crash reconstruction?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that, please?
In 1994, I went through the 80-hour at-scene course. Back going through the basic police academy, I had the 40-hour basic crash course. Then in 1994, I went to the Vermont Police Academy, went through the at-scene crash investigation course, which was 80 hours. I found that I really, really liked doing this stuff, and I told the department, hey, can I go to the next level? And they said, sure. 6 years later, I got to go to the next level. I went to the Massachusetts State Police Academy and 2000 and went through the advanced course. I came back from that. I said, wow, I really like this stuff. Can I go become a Reconstructionist? They said, sure. 6 years later, they sent me to the Vermont Police Academy where I was trained in another 80-hour course and I became a Reconstructionist. So,
And from that time forward, are you keeping updated on any new advances in research, crash
yes,
reconstruction?
yes. In 2009, I went to a motorcycle crash reconstruction course at the Massachusetts State Police Academy. I'm also a member of NAPARS, which is the National Association of Professional Accident Reconstruction Specialists. In 2017, I prepared for and took the ACTAR exam, and the ACTAR stands for the Accreditation Commission for Traffic Accident Reconstructionists. It's kind of not necessarily a licensing board, but it's a very rigorous 8-hour exam. And if you pass that, then you're recognized as an accredited reconstructionist.
How many crashes or accidents have you been involved with over the course of your career? Can you give us a ballpark
That I've been involved in?
in investigating? Not
Oh,
that you
oh.
got into the crash yourself. but that
Like
you
three
investigated.
maybe, but if as far as like responding to crashes,
Yes, yes.
I don't know, it's got to be more than 1,000. You know, over 29 years, it was a lot.
And over the 29 years, how many head-on collisions have you gone out and investigated?
I'd say over 100, probably.
Have you ever testified in court on crash reconstruction?
Yes,
And have you been recognized by those courts in Vermont as an expert in traffic crash reconstruction?
yes, I have.
Can you tell us some of the counties you've testified in?
Windham County, down in the Brattleboro area, and Rutland County.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move to offer Mr. Sorensen as an expert in traffic crash reconstruction.
Any objection to the court will make the finding.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get to why we're here today. Did you become involved in an investigation involving someone by the name of Stephen Bourgoin?
Yes, I did.
And have you ever met the defendant, Mr. Bourgoin?
No.
And what date did you become involved? Do you remember?
I think Sergeant Ballinger, who was in charge of the team, called me on October 14th of 2016.
So is it safe to assume that you did not respond to the scene on October 8th?
That's
to the morning
correct.
of October 9th, okay. And were you assigned to do a crash investigation in this case?
Yes, I worked with Sergeant Ballinger and other members of the crash reconstruction team.
When you first got involved in this case, were you briefed on what had happened?
Yes,
And can you tell us, please, do you understand that there were actually 2 crashes, not just one?
yes.
And what is your understanding of what happened in the first crash?
There was a 2004 Volkswagen Jetta that was traveling south on Interstate 89, just north of the area known as French Hill.
Do you know what lane that Jetta was traveling in?
I believe it was in the southbound travel lane.
Okay. And continue.
And there was a 2012 Toyota Tacoma pickup truck that was traveling north in the southbound lanes,
Which lane, do you remember?
the passing lane.
Okay. And then there was a second crash. What is your understanding of what happened in that second crash?
My understanding is that the operator of the Toyota Tacoma got into Officer Shepard's police cruiser, left the scene, and then came back through the scene at a very high speed and struck the Toyota Tacoma.
Your analysis in this crash reconstruction that you did in this case, was the focus on the first crash?
Yes, it was.
Did you determine anything about the second crash with respect to calculations or conclusions?
Just from the electronic data from the police cruiser that there was a very high impact speed.
Okay. So you told us what crash investigation was, and I believe you said that the purpose of crash investigation is to find out what happened. Am I
Cor-
correct about that?
Correct.
And in this particular case, were you able to arrive at certain conclusions, calculations about why this crash happened or how this crash happened?
Yes.
Okay. Did you factor into your analysis in this crash investigation the area of impact that we had heard about yesterday from Sergeant Ballinger?
Yes.
And how about the point of maximum engagement?
Yes.
And the final rest position of the vehicles?
Yes.
The physical evidence that was found on scene?
Yes.
The measurements that were taken on scene?
Yes.
The physical inspection of the vehicles?
Yes.
The electronic data from the airbag control module?
Yes.
Anything else that you can think of other than what I just listed?
I think Sergeant Ballinger and I kind of shared responsibility for the investigation. We were kind of the leads, if you will, on this. We had help from other members of the team as well with various aspects of it. And I remember reading his report, and he made reference to a witness who had seen the Toyota Tacoma go by her just prior to the crash occurring, and she said that the Toyota was in the southbound passing lane.
Do you remember her name?
Erin Farr, I
Okay.
believe.
Okay, so before we get into the very specific details of your investigation, let's talk about generally what you learned as a result of your investigation, okay?
Sure.
So let's talk about the Toyota Tacoma first, and it's your understanding that was driven by the defendant, Mr. Bourgoin?
That's correct, yes.
So Sergeant Ballinger told us yesterday that you actually had electronic data from his airbag control module from that truck. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Based on all of the factors that we just listed that you considered in your analysis and the EDR data, were you able to determine the path of travel of the Toyota Tacoma moments before the crash?
Yes, I was.
So again, what is your understanding, or what was your determination as to where the Toyota was just moments before the crash? Which lane?
In the seconds before the crash, it's my belief that it started out in the southbound passing lane, crossed into the southbound travel lane, and then struck the Volkswagen Jetta near the center line.
So it's your conclusion that the defendant was in the passing lane, and did you say he went into another lane?
Yes, the southbound travel lane.
Okay. And did he move from the southbound travel lane in any other direction?
Yes. He basically, for the first 3 sampling periods, traveled with a 0-degree heading, steered to the left slightly, and then steered to the right, and then right at impact steered back to the left.
Okay, and we'll get into that in more detail a little bit later. Were you able to determine, with the information that you had, what speed the defendant was going at different moments prior to impact?
Yes.
Okay, and were you also able to determine if there was any braking action at different moments before the impact?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so now let's talk about the VW Jetta for a moment. Sergeant Ballinger testified yesterday that there was no electronic data available from the Jetta. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. I believe you just testified that you had been made aware that the Jetta was coming southbound in the travel lane.
Correct.
Based on your education, training, and experience, if a driver, just generally speaking, if a driver sees another vehicle approaching them going the wrong way, would you expect the driver to take any sort of action?
Yes, I would hope so.
And what would you expect that action to be?
Brake and steer to the right.
Okay. And we don't have any electronic data to tell us whether that's what the Jetta did, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. But we do have the electronic data from the truck.
Yes.
So Sergeant Ballinger also testified yesterday that the area of impact was near the center line of the southbound lanes. And I'd like to show you the slide that we were talking about with him. have a pointer there if you need, right in front of you. So, do you agree that that was the area of impact
Yes.
between the vehicles? And can you point, please, for the ladies and gentlemen, Jerry, where the center line is on that?
It's right there.
Okay. In your opinion, does that mean that the Jetta would have had to have moved to the center line at some point prior to the impact?
Yes. As a matter of fact, I believe that this mark here was created by the right front inside part of the rim of the Volkswagen Jetta. And so if the right front tire is there, then the rest of the car would be off in this direction.
So, slide 38, please, Sarah. Sergeant Ballinger also testified as to the maximum engagement. And we're looking at slide 38. Do you agree with his conclusion that this was the point of maximum engagement?
Yes.
And can you point to where the center line would be on that diagram, please?
It's in this diagram, it's this black line right here. Since we printed it on a white background, we just made instead of the center line being white, we wanted it to stand out, so we made it black.
So again, does that mean that the Jetta must have moved left to get to that center line at maximum engagement?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. And again, we also have the electronic data from the truck
Yes.
in this analysis. And were you able to determine the speed the Jetta was going at impact
Yes.
and after impact?
Yes.
Okay. So now let's get to the specifics of your investigation. Did you ever go to the scene of the crash?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and when was that? Do you remember?
I think it was October 17th.
And at that point, was the scene cleared of all
Yes.
vehicles?
Yes, it was normalized. Yes.
And what did you do at the scene on October 12th?
I kind of
17th, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to get a general lay of the land for myself because I'd driven through the area countless times before, but I'd never stopped in that specific area. So I wanted to see what was there, and I wanted to see what evidence there was still present.
And did you take any photographs?
Yes,
And did you take measurements?
I think so.
Was this the only visit to the scene that you made?
No, I can't tell you how many times I've been back to the scene.
Okay.
Lots.
Okay. Why did you keep going back?
Well, kind of one example, like on the 17th, we went back and I got to see some of the gouges that were still in the roadway. And I think several days later, we examined the Jetta, and then I specifically recall finding some damage on the Jetta that I wanted to go back to the scene and compare. So I remember kind of going back and forth from the Williston Barracks to the scene to compare the evidence from the vehicle to the evidence still at the scene.
Okay. And I believe you just said that you actually had an occasion to inspect the Jetta.
Yes, that's correct.
Where did you do that?
At the Williston State Police Barracks.
Did you also inspect the Toyota Tacoma?
Yes.
At the barracks, okay. And Sergeant Ballinger told us yesterday that he had given you the electronic data from the truck itself.
Yes, that's
And
correct.
Did you analyze that electronic data?
Yes, I did.
And make certain calculations?
Yes.
Can you give us an estimate of how many hours in total you put into this investigation?
My rough guess would be in excess of 200 hours, possibly more.
So we're going to now talk about your calculations, the data that you examined. But before we do that, I'd just like to go to, this is a scene diagram. Have you seen this before?
Yes.
Okay. And can you just explain to the jury what it depicts?
So down at the bottom, so the north, that's actually true north, or I'm sorry, magnetic north. Interstate 89 for the most part, travels in a north-south direction, but in this particular area, it kind of curves to the west, if you will. That's why the north arrow is pointing in the direction of magnetic north. So, but we refer to, these are the southbound lanes, so traffic would be coming from the north, traveling south. So down here at the bottom, we have the first collision. The vehicle 2 is the Jetta, vehicle 1 is the Toyota Tacoma. This is the Jetta's final position, or position of final rest. That is the Tacoma's position of final rest after it was struck by the police cruiser up here. And then all of these vehicles here were all vehicles that were struck by debris or stuff from the second crash.
And to the very far left, where the line of vehicles are, what does that depict?
I believe that's a vehicle on its side.
Okay, so we are now going to talk to the jury about the data you received and the calculations you made and how you arrived at the conclusions that you arrived at, okay?
Okay.
All right, so here we are at speed to velocity conversion. Please tell us what this is and why you need to do it.
So when we're trying to do crash reconstruction, if we're going to do any sort of time distance analysis, typically our vehicles will record information in speed in miles per hour. What we need to do is convert that to a velocity in feet per second. And the way that we do that is we multiply the speed by a conversion factor of 1.466, and that tells us how many feet per second a vehicle is traveling.
Okay, so this is how you go about deciding or determining what the speed was of the vehicle that we're talking about here in this case, one of the steps.
Well, the speed comes from the EDR data or the airbag control module data. So I'm taking the information, here I have speed from EDR, that comes from that report that Sergeant Ballinger gave me that he downloaded from the Toyota. I don't know if you folks covered it yesterday, but the next line down, speed adjusted, the Toyota Tacoma had slightly larger tires on it than what the manufacturer recommended.
Is that?
Yes. So it was about the tires were about 3.4% larger, which means that that's going to equate to about a 3.4% increase in the reported speed. So if we go, okay. So if you were to multiply 78.9 by 1.034, you would get 81.5. So this is the approximate actual speeds based upon the different tire sizes.
And the time above that line, minus 4.8, is that the time prior to impact?
Yes.
In seconds?
Yes.
Okay, we have a chart averaging velocity. Can you talk to us about that, please?
So these speeds that are produced for or taken from the EDR, if you think about taking a snapshot or a picture of the data at that minus 4.8 seconds, that minus 4.3 seconds, that's what the airbag control module is doing. Is it's taking a snapshot of the data that it collects at that particular instant in time. So to get a more accurate representation for time distance analysis, we take the average between the two sampling periods, because as you can see, so like say between the minus 0.08 and minus 0.03, we have an EDR speed of 80.8 miles per hour, and at minus 0.03, 75.8. So that's roughly about a 5 mile an hour difference. So we're going to convert that speed into velocity and then take the average of those two to get a more accurate representation. of the distance traveled during that sampling period time.
When we see 0 on the timeline, does that mean that's at impact?
It's technically AE or algorithm enable. That's when the airbag control module tells the system something bad has just happened or is happening. Deploy the airbags or pretensioners and/or pretensioners, seatbelt pretensioners. So that's something bad is happening. That's what the 0 means.
Okay. So please take us through then what the chart shows as far as how fast the defendant was going at the moments, the seconds before the impact, please.
So at the EDR reported speed at 4.8 seconds before impact was 78.9. At 4.3 seconds, 80.8.
So he had actually sped up.
Correct.
Okay.
At 3.8 seconds, 82.6, so he's still accelerating. Minus 3.3 seconds, 83.9. 2.8 seconds before impact, 85.7. Then he accelerates to 87 miles an hour, stays constant velocity for a sampling period of half a second at 87. Then the speed starts to drop with an impact speed. Again, that's an EDR or AC or airbag control module reported speed of 75.8, but remember it's got larger tires on it, so we have to increase the speed or adjust the speed for the larger tires. So we have an impact speed of about 78.3 miles per hour.
And what is this chart?
So this is, I'm taking the velocity, which is in feet per second, but if you'll notice that the time periods are not in full seconds, you see that it's 4.8 to 4.3. So that sampling period is actually half a second. And it's half a second all the way up until the last one between the minus 0.3 and 0, then that's 0.3 of a second, okay? So in order to determine the distance, what we do is, again, remember velocity is in feet per second. So if we're traveling at 114.79 feet per second, if we multiply that number, the 114.79, by 0.3, which is the time sampling period between 0 and 0.3, that tells us how many feet the vehicle traveled at that velocity. And I just basically did that all the way back to the minus 4.8 seconds.
Okay, and what is the significance of knowing the number of feet that was traveled?
We're going to get into that, but we need to know the vehicle's sort of longitudinal position on the roadway as we work our way through this crash. So this is the distance between each sampling period. So in this case, the distance the Toyota Tacoma was from impact or algorithm enable at 0.3 of a second is that distance minus that distance. Okay, so that's 34.44. And I just worked my way through. So then this distance here is going to be 93.72 minus 34.44 for 59.29 feet. So then I can determine what the distance traveled for each sampling period is.
And again, these are calculations that are going to be used throughout your analysis?
Yes.
And what is this?
So on this particular vehicle, not only is speed and accelerator pedal and braking information provided, but also steering wheel angle is provided. And again, it's kind of a snapshot of the data that's being collected at each particular sampling period time. So this right here is my spreadsheet, and then this is actually a snip from the actual chart that I think Sergeant Ballinger showed you yesterday from the actual report. So,
That big chart, below
yes.
the numbers?
Yep, so this number, they all correlate.
And this?
This is from the data limitations of that report that Sergeant Ballinger provided me from the Toyota Tacoma. And one of the things that we have to do is go through the data limitations to find out if there's anything specific about this particular vehicle. And one of the things that's in these reports is this data element sign convention. And what's important here is it says a positive sign indicates, whatever's going on down below here. And for steering input, a positive sign means that the steering wheel is being turned to the left. Okay, and conversely, if it's a negative sign, the steering wheel is being turned to the right. Okay, so think of 0 here. We're going to go positive this way, negative this way.
And this?
This is sort of what I just did with my hands here. So if we have a positive steering wheel angle, we're steering to the left. If we have a negative steering wheel angle, we're steering to the right. And that's just showing the position of the tires, kind of an exaggerated view.
Now, talk to us about this.
So when I started doing this report and doing this investigation, I was trying to figure out a way to sort of visually represent what the data in these charts was telling me. So I found a clear protractor and a steering wheel that has a mark on top dead center. What you can't see behind this little red line is there's a little yellow mark on that steering wheel to mark where 0 is for that steering wheel. And I'm just using this red pointer as like a gauge to show you what angle the steering wheel is being turned to.
So in this diagram here, is the steering wheel being turned at all?
No,
Okay, and-
that's at 0.
Okay, and this is at 4.8 seconds before impact.
Correct.
And this is the information you received from the airbag control module?
Correct.
Of the defendant's truck?
And I believe that the speed is the adjusted speed for the larger tire size.
So at 4.8 seconds prior to impact, the angle being at 0, what does that indicate to you?
That the vehicle is traveling straight.
Okay.
It's not turning one way or the other.
Okay, and the vehicle is traveling at 81.5 miles per hour.
Correct.
And now this next diagram, tell us about that.
So at 4.3 seconds, the steering angle is still 0, so it's still traveling straight ahead. For the next several slides, I've put in delta angle, and that triangle just means the difference between this one and the last one, just to give you some reference. And then the speed, again, it's the adjusted speed for the larger size tires. So he's accelerating to 83.47 miles per hour.
At 4.3 seconds prior to.
Correct.
This,
At 3.8 seconds, the steering wheel angle is still reported to be 0. The change in angle is 0 because it was 0 before. And he's increased speed to 85.33 miles per hour.
and this,
In this case, we have a 3-degree positive, so left turn, steering wheel angle change. So
If I
the,
could stop you just a moment. So
Yes.
if the defendant is traveling northbound in the southbound lane, and he is starting to steer left, where is he going? Which lane is he heading towards?
if he's in the north-southbound passing lane, he would be headed toward the southbound travel lane.
Okay, so please continue. Apologize.
So again, we have at 3.3 seconds, we have a positive or slight left turn. The change from the previous, from the 3.8 second sampling period is 3 degrees, and he's still increasing speed. He's up to 86.67 miles per hour. At 2.8 seconds, basically the same thing. The steering wheel angle is at 3 degrees. So the change in angle, because remember before, on the previous sampling period, it was 3 degrees. So the change in angle is 0. And he's still accelerating 88.53 miles per hour.
At 2.3 seconds, what's going on?
At 2.3 seconds, the steering wheel angle is a positive 36 degrees, which is a change in angle of 33 degrees. And speed has increased to 89.87 miles per hour.
In trying to understand the diagram you have here, if that red arrow was all the way at 270 and someone is in the passing lane, where would that vehicle be if they're now steering it at the 270 degree mark?
I don't,
Would that be fully, I guess my question is, would that be fully in the left lane at 270, or at what point is that vehicle?
well,
then
it's
fully-
all going to depend on your vehicle speed. If you were doing 1/10 of a mile an hour, you could turn the wheel a whole bunch of times and you might not be in that lane. But if you're doing 89 miles an hour and you turn the wheel 90 degrees to the left, you're probably going to be in the woods.
So he's continuing to increase his speed, he's almost at 90 miles per hour here,
Correct.
okay? And at 1.8 seconds, what's happening?
So at 1.8 seconds, the steering wheel angle is 15 degrees. So it's been turned back approximately 21 degrees, because remember it was at 36 degrees. Now it's 21, he's turned it 21 degrees to the right, and speed stays constant at 89.87 miles per hour.
And at 1.3 seconds?
So you can see we were over here. Now the steering wheel is turned over to minus 51 degrees. So the delta, or the change in angle, is 66 degrees. So remember it was like 15 degrees over here, and it's been turned 51 degrees, so the change in angle is 66 degrees.
So the vehicle is now turning to the right?
Hard to the right,
Hard to the right, back to where it would originally come from?
correct.
Okay.
Actually, could you back up? So in this instance, the speed has declined slightly. It's gone down about 3 miles per hour. But what's also important is the EDR data, or the electronic data recorder data, shows that the brakes were applied. The vehicle's brakes were applied at 1.3 seconds prior to impact.
So at this point, the speed has decreased somewhat.
Yes.
Are you able to determine how much pressure had been applied to the brakes to decrease it at this speed?
It's in the EDR report. I don't remember what that value was.
Okay. Would it have been a significant brake application?
Not particularly.
Now we're at 0.8 seconds.
So at 0.8 seconds, steering wheel angle's reported to be minus 54 degrees. So the change in angle, remember it was minus 51, so 54 minus 51, change in angle is about 3 degrees. just a little bit more to the right. Speed has decreased down to 83.47 miles an hour, and again, the brakes are applied.
In going back to when the brakes were first applied, now he's at 86 and then he's at 83. Again, is that indicative of how much pressure is being applied to the brakes in light of the fact that the speed is not dropping very fast?
I don't remember so one of the lines on that EDR report, the big report or big chart that you showed with Sergeant Ballinger yesterday, one of those lines is the actual brake system pressure. And as I recall, I don't remember the specific values aside from the last one. I know that it was the maximum value, but I believe that the 1.3, 0.8, and 0.3 seconds prior to impact, I believe that the pressure was kind of steadily increasing.
Okay. So now we're at 0.3 seconds. What's going on here?
So at 0.3 of a second before impact, the steering wheel angle is reported to be minus 75 degrees, so it's turned quite a bit to the right. The change in angle is 21 degrees from the previous sampling period, and the speed has decreased to 78.3 miles per hour.
And you have brakes being applied?
Yes, and the brakes are applied.
So at this point, the vehicle is still turning to the right?
Correct.
So at this point, we have the vehicle going straight, going left, now going right.
Correct.
And we're here at impact.
So at impact, the reported steering wheel angle was minus 51 degrees, so still turned to the right, but the change in angle is 24 degrees, so instead of being at 75, it's turned 24 degrees to the left.
So does that indicate that the operator of the vehicle, the defendant, actually turned left again prior to impact?
Yes.
Okay. And the speed he was going at impact was 78.3 miles per hour?
Yes.
And were you able to determine whether the brakes were on at the time of impact?
I don't remember seeing any skid marks or anything like that, but I believe that vehicle was equipped with anti-lock brakes.
And what is this?
So this is, I did some research for a 2012 Toyota Tacoma. I wanted to find out what the steering ratio was. So if the ratio was 1-to-1, if I turn the steering wheel 5 degrees, the tires would turn 5 degrees. But we all know that you can turn the steering wheel a whole bunch of times and the tires don't turn all the way around. Otherwise, you'd have a shopping cart, right? Okay, so in this particular case, this was a 2012 Toyota Tacoma 4x4. For that vehicle, the overall steering ratio is 17.3 turns of the steering wheel to 1 full turn of the actual tires, okay? So for every 17.3 degrees we turn the steering wheel, the tires turn 1 degree. Okay?
And why is that important to your calculations?
Because just like we convert the speed to velocity to figure out sort of the longitudinal position of a vehicle on a roadway. Now what we're doing is we're kind of figuring out the lateral position using the steering wheel angle.
The steering tire angle conversion, can you talk to us about that, please?
Sure. So this is the steering tire angle that comes directly from the EDR report. You've seen that before. So the steering tire angle is just dividing that number by 17.3. So if you pulled out a calculator and divided 36 by 17.3, you get 2.08. So for minus 4.8 to minus 3.8, steering wheel is at 0. Divide that by 17.3, you get 0. For minus 3.3 and minus 2.8, 3 degree steering wheel angle, divide that by 17.3, you get 0.17. For minus 2.3, 36 degree steering wheel angle, divide that, and so forth right down through.
Translating to scale diagram. Please talk about that.
So, using the measurements that Sergeant Ballinger and I think it was myself and Trooper Helm to create the overall scene diagram, I knew that I wanted to, when I was doing this reconstruction, I wanted to try to figure out where the Toyota Tacoma was for each of these sampling periods, the 0 working out to the 4.8 seconds prior to impact. And when I looked at my electronic diagram, we use diagramming software to produce the diagrams that you see. I found that for the most part, the roadway was oriented with 90 degrees to the top. The lanes were pretty much oriented in that direction. So to get kind of a general location for the Toyota on the diagram, I used 90 degrees and I added that. So the heading on the diagram, if the vehicle had a 0 degree heading or was going straight ahead, its heading on the diagram would be 90 degrees. So I basically added 90 degrees to the steering tire angle. Okay.
Okay. You said that you had inspected the vehicles back at the barracks. Did the damage to either vehicle support the EDR data that we've been talking about, that a sharp right was made by the Toyota Tacoma immediately prior to the crash?
Yes, it did.
And we've heard testimony from 911 callers that the defendant or a vehicle had been driving northbound in the southbound passing lanes for over 2 miles. In your opinion, your expert opinion, based on your education, training, and experience, if the defendant had stayed in the passing lane, would this crash have occurred?
No.
Do you want to approach?